else's deeper hell, and have been treading the fire ever since. Usually, they call a boat of people fleeing death immigrants, or if you're from South America, aliens. But some folks love a good epic, so for magical realism's sake, we'll call it a miracle. The end is a long exercise in patience. On the 40th day, Noah sent out the dove, and it came back with hope in its beak. At the vigil we held for the migrants who didn't make it, we released doves. They never returned. Legend has it, there's a rainbow gushing out of Grizzly Peak. East Oakland's rugged crown, drowners at its steep feet. Juvenescence jigsaw piled into whichever ill-equipped ride we could negotiate. A scraper, Park Avenue, LeSabre, or other General Motors car born before we were. We ascend to find the beginning of colors. Blunts in hands, we aim to get high. We don't wait for God's generosity. We peel back the clouds. Up here, and after 8 p.m., even a citywide graveyard looks like a pot of gold. I'm not saying there is a God, but we jumped into the flood without ever knowing how to swim, and waded in the water or sifted through the cracks on the ocean floor. In the photo, a black boy is holding another black boy, and out the mouth of the small one's chest is a beam. And I know no other way to compute retribution than black folks being owed heaven and only having to say amen for it. Okay, how you guys doing? You okay? Doing all right. Okay, good to know. Here's the next poem. It's called Self-Portrait as a Family Tree. Self-portrait as a family tree. Whole and unpruned, branches sweeping the ungraved ground beneath. The sun is our pastor. Bark generation thick, flesh stretched around like a seed in the womb. Nodes bearing babies as fruit, as food for the squirrels. Here, everything eats. Palms learning to feed, not learning to become bread for a nation's interest and kindle. When the water comes, our branches web a canopy, a home, a refuge for the finch. When it goes, we uncurl, our leaves mouths wide, our tongues cradle the water. Lifeblood for later, branches sag, but ain't no swing holding us down. But the nylon of a black boy's adolescence and his scraped knees as he launches from the wood strung from our provision, chest toward the blue-laden sky, wind whistling between our limbs, damp of the air settling on his pores. The gale hasn't come and won't come. I know. Genetics means we belong to our ancestors, but right now we are weeping, watching the boy forget about the thick of his grandfather's sins, watching the boy forget about the thick of his grandfather's sins. The storm hasn't shaken us and won't. Right now, there is peace like a river, joy like a flood. All right. Let's see. A good friend of mine passed away a couple years ago, and have to tell you how I felt when that happened, and I wrote a poem about it, thinking about this very famous mortuary or funeral home in Oakland on International Boulevard, what they used to call East 14th, called C.P. Bannon. That's the name of the hall there. And they released doves at the services. And so I thought about the doves. I thought about my friend. I thought about what it means to not make it to C35. And here's the poem. It begins with an epigraph by Hanif Abdur-Rakib, which is called Our Grief, or which says, rather, Our grief decides when it is done with us. On Preservation, featuring C.P. Bannon. Tell me there's another poem on both sides of this barrel, body cocked and nuanced, and awaiting the shrapnel's careful decision, both craving immortality. I want to say something about East 14th and how it stretches its arms from the gut of Oakland to forever. For those I care, that is the longevity I crave. I passed by 12 liquor stores on my way to the liquor store. I passed by 7 churches on my way to church. Sir, from the etymology of conservancy, means to protect, as in observatory or self-preservation, like Huey holding a 45 on the steps of the Capitol. A street is still a street if it is renamed. A bullet is still a bullet inside of a throat. Remember, telling the truth is an act of safeguarding. I forget how to write a poem on my way to writing a poem. On a day the sun is showing its good side, we spill out of C.P. Bannon like a torrent. My grandfather tells me the only way for the fallen to live longer is at a funeral. And he resembles a love more materialized than mine, so I believe him. Says the more people that attend, the longer he'll last, so I show up. Remember, a mortuary is a congregation with the task of preserving the dead. Tell me it's another way to be saved. I want to say something about the dove and immortality, how we cast our collective gaze towards an infinite horizon stretched above a row of big-body American cars running from C.P. Bannon to forever. How preservation is now the responsibility of the bird, its wings palming the sky before it cascades into blue. Remember, a gavel is a bullet first and everything else second. I say boundless and mean the dove is no dove at all, but a homing pigeon hoping to make it back to the cage before it is released again. I say infinity and mean they came from me that morning and you that night. I'm going to read just 2 more poems. This next one is a crown of sonnets. Y'all know what a crown of sonnets is? I hear a couple folks, yeah. Basically, it's a really nerdy way for poets to be even more difficult than they already are. It's a form in which there's a bunch of sonnets. The first line ends up being, the last line of each sonnet ends up being the first line of the next sonnet in the sequence, right? And now they even have more complex forms like heroic, crowns of sonnets in which there's double the number of sonnets and double the amount of nerdiness and complexity from poets. This is not that. This is just a regular crown of sonnets. It's about and in conversation with James Baldwin. And so I'll read the title of each sonnet in between each sonnet, and then I'll just kind of go forth. But understand this is all one poem, I guess. I guess I'll also say that it's inspired by many of the events and people he had relationships with, such as Maya Angelou, such as his relationship with being a child or prodigy preacher and teen preacher as a young boy, teenager, such as his mother, who he had a very close relationship with, on his idea of progress, as well as how he left this world with the folks that meant a lot to him and the same folks who were compatriots and co-conspirators sitting at the welcome table when he left this earth. So anyways, this is Jimmy's Crown, and this is probably the heart of this new collection of poems I'm working on, because it's largely in conversation with James Baldwin and James Baldwin's mind and thinking and work, alas, the same kinds of themes and ideas that Whitman exhibited too, right? Jimmy's Crowned. This first one's called Pulpit. Remember the anguish. It calls out again. Remember, the offering basket is only as full as the bodies jumping into it. And I've never known a predator that didn't wish itself full. In this pulpit, where the boy with the most sermonic pulls stands against the doctrine of pariah, bring me the mouth of a saint, and I'll sew you a fortune of bones bleached white. We ain't got nowhere to go but the rupture or the rapture if you spin it clean enough through. Good news is we're coming up on half a millennia and ain't suffering the point. My stepfather says, twisting the cogs of his arm back near my sister's face, we're hungry and ain't nothing but the gospel to eat. I'm afraid we'll starve to death. Jig is up. I'm afraid we'll starve to death out the ship if we wedge close enough. Archipelago is never talked about like it's the good part, the same way a rapper who hasn't died in their 20s isn't a goat of posthumous celebration, the ways we almost survived. We still here nudging this mountain, and there ain't nothing to chipping away a Goliath made out of a lie of names. Say black, and another white gets its stripes. Say crown, and the homies will insist Hove or Big or K-Dot, but the crown ain't the point. The point is physics. Once, my sister saved me from falling out of a third-story window, and all it took were her small hands. And ain't love another type of salvation? The fall, doing what it must to ruin us, our hands doing what they must to survive. Another country, our hands doing their best to survive this massacre before collapsing into petition for another's dream. The sermon in the wreckage. Everyone I love changes based on proximity. While in Durban, a boy half my age speaks of martyrdom, tells me the best thing for a poet to do is break open. Ode to the chasm, then ode to the madness it holds. Ode to the madness, then ode to the hands that claw at its walls. Ode to the sound of rage we have no name for. Glass crashing into glass, the knife of some odd-named king in your back 2 countries away, and out the throat of mine here. For Maya. And out the throat of mine here is the caged bird singing what it must. After gathering all this white noise, trilling all the men in its beak, like a secret between a lover and its prey. Pray for a world holy enough to sin in. My brother and his brother too, stumbling over brand new limbs, landing in a field of evening primrose, their grandmothers planted way, way back enough for the spores to float from valley to valley. Hood to hood, country to damned country. This poem, too, is an instrument against boys being boys, against any munition designed to lay claim. For birdies, for Sandra. I'm against any munition designed to lay claim, but I have been known to swing a fist or two. The best way to characterize a hammer, selfless. My grandfather tells me one summer we visit, and I know no other way to describe my mother becoming less of herself each time she tosses another pill into a body that's been taken but still provides with what it doesn't have. Are there levels to the murder? Who owns the lever? Who is the spoil? Bring me the tools, the chest, and all of its spells. Bring me the promise to avenge what I owe. I cannot decide if he meant the tool or the surface. What's to feel empathy for? How exhausting the blues of pillage. Another kind of drum. Another kind of war. Progress. Another kind of drum. Another kind of war. Another reason to tremble. The bars swing open and the choir cues. A flood of bodies organized into a hymn. When Sam Cooke sang of chains, I wonder if he knew white teens would exalt and swing. How much time does it take for a song to become antiquated? How many words have we created for progress? Better, not, dead, alive, and hanging on by my grandmother's prayers, graying petitions, her voice heavy enough to shake a tree. I first learned of tomorrow by counting the wrinkles on her palms tethered to mine. Praise the gods who aren't Western. My people and yours under this divine sky praying for rain. Welcome table. My people pray for rain, and the sky opens its mouth Cadillac wide. And now the ghosts are home and mourning bones. The living ones too say there's such little time. I am sitting at this table remembering how Jimmy left, with a chorus of conspirators at his side. Bessie doing her best rendition of Godspeed, so I concede. And Nia hops out the back of the lack humming along with two tongues, and Quentin knows all about the body and the rhythm it's capable of, and we need a jukebox at the revolution, so he brings his poems. And Joy is shitting shotgun with a shotgun full of seeds, tells me it ain't nothing to blowing up this experiment of a country but some white smoke, and Itiola with her field of names curling into themselves, and Darius is at the podium, says there's fires to start. Remember, they call anguish again. Okay, I lied. I'll do two more poems now after this one, because I really want to read Jimmy's Bop. I thought of James Baldwin, which is a good thing. I'm going to read another nerdy poem. It's called a bop. And it was invented by Affa Weaver, or Affa Powell, rather. And essentially, it's 3 stanzas with like a repetition of a line between those 3 stanzas. The first 2 stanzas are supposed to present the problem, and the last stanza is supposed to either resolve or speak on the lack of resolve within the poem. This poem was written as a persona poem in the voice of James Baldwin, talking about when he found out that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. So this is, the journalist asked Jimmy what it was like when Martin died. Well, I suppose we could spend more time pretending I bought a new suit for Carnegie Hall. Hold on, pause. James Baldwin was a very small man, like small, like less than 140 pounds. He spoke at Carnegie Hall with Martin Luther King and didn't have a suit to wear. And he wanted to wear a suit because Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, among other folks, although they engaged in critical debate, although they had differing views on some things, they also, what a lot of folks don't know, were very intimate, close in conversation. So he was very proud of Martin Luther King and also felt the 3 men, himself, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, were all actually articulating the same thing in different ways. All that to say, he had a speaking engagement at Carnegie Hall with Martin Luther King and wanted to look sharp. He said, I'm going to go, speak with Martin Luther King. I need to look sharp. So he got a suit. That suit was oversized, huge. It was the only suit he owned, right? He also wanted to wear a suit to Martin Luther King's funeral. And so he wore the same suit that he had bought to wear when he was speaking with Martin Luther King just months prior. That's important context to this poem. All right, Bop. The journalist asked Jimmy what it was like when Martin died. Well, I suppose we could spend more time pretending I bought a new suit for Carnegie Hall. Bought a new suit for the occasion. Bought a new suit with dues from Paris. Yes, it's true. He pays a price for an America which still leaves a balance. Well, I have a future held in the lungs of this great thundering silence, this sleeping giant. Lord, when you send the rain, Think about it, please, a little. Lord, Dorothy still navigates a crowd like the devil's bullet, surrounded by saints dressed in all white. Oh, yes, I weep now. Yes, I weep again. Word is, they're hurling prayers in the air, hoping something sticks. I find myself amongst the mess on the floor, staggering the fissured healing ground. Lord, there's soot all over the alabaster, and they're calling it a revolution. Lord, the mule they promised us is dragging Martin's wagon to the grave. Lord, when you send the rain, think about it, please, a little. Well, I suppose the next thing to do is lie down here on this dirt road in the path of that old sweet chariot, wishing for it to swing down and carry us home. Precious Lord, here is your song in a strange land, Lord. What does it mean to repent in despair, Lord? What does it mean to lie in repentance? I know why we are still here. I've grown weary in the wake. Lord, send the rain. Okay, I'm going to end and then stop rambling at y'all for a moment while we get the mic set up. Yeah, this is the last poem, y'all. Like I said, I'm having a baby, y'all. I'm not having a baby. My wife's having a baby. Although many times I do feel like I'm co-pregnant. Anyways, there was a beautiful moon, maybe a couple months ago, right? We all went outside, flocked outside to see the moon. And I'm a poet, and so poets write about the moon. Anyways, I'm thinking of my wife, whom I've spent the day away from now, who probably needs me more than anyone here. And I'm thinking about my son, who's forthcoming, and I'm thinking about the moon. And so this is a short poem about going outside to see the moon. It's called Unsurprisingly, We Go Outside to See the Moon. It'll be the bluest it's ever been, headlines say. Your hair gathered at the crown of your head, like a hand plucking at the full orb. We sway to the curb, the night purpling around us. Your stomach pulling back the length of my trench coat. Though it is the penultimate day of August, I insist you see the moon. In your nightly attire, as little as your body affords, nakedness under the field of artifact. 2 cop cars saunter past within 2 minutes. I point to the glow. The deepest blue I know, and it grows, then shrinks like a god small enough to hold. You are 2 months away from the fissure that bearing life requires, and pregnancy is its own anarchy. There is a theory that the universe is infinite, and still, I am learning to traverse all of the right nows harvested in the space between our muggy bodies. We'll make it out this swamp, as if to say, in the photo we take on Benton Street, the roofline births an ombre of black scientists haven't named yet. But between our heads is the moon. It is ours, and one and still. Thank you all. As I understand it, we get to talk now. If y'all